Hey everybody, Dr. Dan here. This is just a short little lecture to hit some of the high points of chapter 15, which is the last chapter you'll be reading in the book, and then also it'll serve as a very quick quiz review because you do have a final quiz this week, which only is concerned with this chapter. You don't have a final exam in this class, so you basically have a week off during finals week, and also that means we're done after this week, so this is my last lecture. I'd like you to watch the final lecture, which I've also posted in this module, which is a little different, and then this one as well, which is going to cover the content that we're going through this week in class. First of all, I want you to read the entire chapter, chapter 15, but pay careful attention to page 371, which is the Arab and Jewish case for Palestine, and understand the result of the Balfour Declaration in 1917 and the Zionist movement. The bottom line is, for those of you who aren't familiar with what happened there, in 1947, a new territory was formed in Palestine, and that country was Israel. And so this was a homeland for the Jews, the Jewish state that was formed by Western outsiders, actually, and it didn't sit well with the Arabs, who are also claiming, or the Palestinians, who are also claiming that area as their rightful homeland. And so the controversy in the Middle East always, whether it is the 6 Day War and what we read about in the chapter about Israel and going to war with Egypt and the ongoing terrorist attacks on each side by the Palestinians, whether it's that stuff or when you read Osama bin Laden's justifications for hatred towards the West, you'll also see that this idea of this imposed country of Israel is problematic. So, I mean, if you get nothing else out of the chapter, if you weren't familiar with the Middle East, that's one of the big problems. That's one of the big sources of tension is, does Israel have the right to exist as a country where it's located? So read through that. Most of you know that history pretty well, probably some of you more than others. But in case you don't know anything about it and you're curious, why is Israel always controversial? Why are the Palestinians upset about it? You'll gain a clearer understanding as you go through the chapter. So make sure you do that. And that's sort of the biggie in this chapter. And I'm just kind of looking through the reading notes. It's sort of the same old thing that we've learned all semester. As soon as the Western countries or outsiders get involved in a region, there's trouble. And certainly that's been the case in the Middle East after World War II and the collapse of, or actually after World War I and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the collapse of the Persian Empire. There has been a lot of controversy over new governments arising in Turkey and in Iran and in Iraq, and sort of this idea of a modernization of Islam and also reflecting Western culture in Islam as far as the way women are treated. There's controversy all around, and so a lot of this has to do still to this day. Middle East issues have to do still with this day with what happened after World War I and World War II, as far as the West's involvement in sort of defending Israel and redrawing some of those borders. And then also the West's interference in Iran through the Shah of Iran. So there's a lot of reasons for Arabs in the Middle East to be suspicious and hateful, actually, of the West as the way they see it in their history, and some of it is quite frankly justified. So you read through the chapter because I think it gives you a better understanding. And I think, the other thing, as you read through the chapter and you read about Saudi Arabia and you read about countries in the Middle East that are modernizing to some extent, are giving women's rights. I think as you read more about that, you learn that there are other social problems there too. And so one of them is in Saudi Arabia right now, the unemployment rate amongst young people is really high. And I think that as oil becomes less important, and this is going to take a long time, but as oil becomes less important in Saudi Arabia, these social issues and this idea of liberalism is probably going to rear its head again. It certainly tried during the Arab Spring in 2011, which really didn't go far enough. But certainly it's an area to keep an eye on, as you move on out of this class and into the future, because I'm sure that the conflicts in the Middle East are not over yet by a long shot. So it's important to understand all that. So yeah, when you go through the book, make sure you read this 371, these opposing viewpoints, and then also, and I'm just going through real quick, also page 369 is Osama bin Laden's interview that he gave, and it's important to read bin Laden's position also, because he's repeating some of the things I just said, that America has spearheaded a crusade against Islam, and he references Israel and references oil and the oil interest and all of that. So I think it helps us understand the different perspectives in the Middle East between us versus them, and certainly there are a lot of valid points, and there are a lot of moving parts also. I mean, there are the conflicts between Shiite and Sunni Muslims, so you have that happening at the same time, and I just feel like moving forward, this is going to be in the news for quite some time, so it's important for us to understand the basis of it. So there's that part. Go through my reading notes. It's all pretty easy. And then what I want to do really quick is just do a quiz review with you, and then we'll end it and we can move on. So one of the questions asks you to define this notion of pan-Arab or pan-Arabianism. And so understand what that is. And that really started with Nasser in Egypt. And it's this idea, which there's still some impulse to go this route, but there's this idea of unifying all of the Arab states, and that was a movement and a theory that really started in Egypt and really never went anywhere. And so that notion is still out there, but I think it's important to understand this idea of a pan-Arab state where all of the Arab countries get together with some sort of alliance, but that's really been impossible to achieve, and one of the reasons is, again, just illustrated by the differences between Iraq and Iran, how their religions are different, and that adds to a lot of tensions, and is going to be something that's always going to be a roadblock to any broader pan-Arab movement. So understand what the pan-Arab movement is, and we talked about Osama bin Laden a minute ago. I asked you to read that section. So there's a question about bin Laden and what was his first issue with America. So make sure you read through that. That's a little bit of a tricky question, but when I say first issue, pay attention to the first paragraph in that bin Laden interview, and you'll be fine. There's another question about what fuels or what's the basis for Palestinian anger, and we just talked about that, and it's really that formation of Israel within the Palestinian homeland. And then also there's a question about societies in the Middle East and what they're broadly supportive of. And again, it's really about Islamic traditions. I mean, not every Middle East country is a theocracy by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, generally Islam is at the center of Middle East societies, as opposed to like the U.S., where politics and the economy is sort of at the center of our society. So understand the differences between Middle East culture and Western culture. Really easy, has to do with Islam and has to do with tradition. And then also know what the Balfour Declaration is. So again, we talked about reading that section in the textbook about, let me just go back to the page, I apologize, on page 371. So if you reference 371, when you get to the question on the quiz about Palestine and the Balfour Declaration, you'll have the answer there. So again, pretty easy, no big deal. If you have any questions about it, let me know. And then also let me know if you have any papers that I haven't graded or that you emailed or texted to me that I hadn't gotten to. It's your responsibility to go through your grade book and make sure everything's there. And if there is anything missing, contact me immediately so we can get it made up and get it done. So that's it for this week. It's been a great, thank you for your patience. It's been a great semester with all of you, and we got through it. We did a good job, and I wish you the best and wish you to stay safe. Take care now. Bye-bye.